So good morning, everyone. Today we're talking about the considerations of becoming a franchisor, which is someone who wants to franchise the business out to other people to work the business with them and for them. So what we're going to do is exploring what's involved in doing this to get yourself set up as a franchisor or franchisor. And take on franchisees, but there's quite a bit to it. It's not as simple as just grabbing people into your business and being able to replicate it. There's a little bit more to it than that, which Carly and I will go through with you. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Tom. Tom's helping us with the slides because he's the man with the controls. So if you just forgive me having to ask you the slide, Tom.
Yeah, the guy who helps out Chris Whitty normally and Patrick Valance, but we've managed to get him today.
Yeah.
Only known as next slide man, nothing else.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're talking about with the franchise, there's a couple of definitions of franchise. We're going to go through a few of them, but the one we're going to be pretty much familiar with is the method we've got. The two methods we've got here is where a small business can extend its services quickly and cost effectively. And any ADI would want to do that, but it's all very well expanding quickly, but it's going to be done properly. There are legal things that have to be adhered to. There might be some people, depending on how big you want to get, how quick you want to get, is to talk about some financial matters that tax situations that you may have to change with your accountant as well to do this, depending on turnover, VAT, etc. But there's also the right given by one business to another to sell goods using its name. So both of these definitions, they are really within the scope of what we do as ADI. So that's the ones where we're working with. But the true definition, next slide, please, is definition for a franchisor and a franchisee. The franchisor is the company head, basically. He's the person that's brought the idea up, who's got the driving school, who's got everything, all the ducks lined up in the row, professional, got the training manuals, got the CPD organised, got the contracts organised, has got all the areas that he's going to franchise out in postcodes, etc., all organised. And so basically is the person that sells or grants a franchise for the sales of goods or the operation of a service. That's what the franchisor does. The franchisee is the person that joins the franchise and is the individual company that holds a franchise for the sale of goods or the operation of a service. So it's we're talking about doing driving lessons mainly in the learner sector, in car, practical driving, but it can actually be doing, if the franchisor has a package of theory stuff that they use, that they've written and they've got a copyright for, that they might actually franchise that out as part of the franchise contract as well. So the ADI would be able to deliver that as well as part of the franchise contract. So a franchisor would, as a franchisor, or would your goods and services be professional enough to be replicated? So this is what we're going to be discussing today. Is it's all very well you having the idea of wanting to do it, but have you got all the ducks lined up in the row to do it at the moment? So we're going to be giving you the pointers of what those ducks are that need lining up in the row.
And
so
as people might not be aware of my background, but prior to and still during time that I work with DIA, I've done a lot of advice to small to medium-sized enterprises and startups, including how they attract funding and things like that, and with some what are pretty well-known brands now. And one of the things that sometimes people don't necessarily think about when they're starting a new business or extending a brand or business is, can you do these things? People leap very much to the how, where, what. I've got the idea and I just can do it in my mind. I'm going to do it. But actually, there needs to be some focus on, are you actually able to deliver this business model? And should you? Is there a space for you in this market? And is it a sustainable space for you in this market? And have you got all the attributes and resources that you need to sustainably run this business? Not just set it up, actually make it sustain and grow as well. So that's a big question to ask of yourselves before you even take the leap.
Okay, next slide then, please, Tom. Okay. So do you want to go through this bit then, Carly, the franchise model?
So a franchise typically is a type of business that's operated by an individual known as a franchisor, That the definition is wrong there in the one that I borrowed from somewhere. So a franchisee will run the business on behalf of a franchisor who's already set up the business model. Now, franchisors can be offering a completely unique, never been seen before business model, or they can be copying business models from other sector or within their own sector. So the driving school methodology is a replication of franchise models that have been before. Whilst everybody likes to think their franchise is completely unique, the core base of it is setting up a franchise for driver training. So there is a relationship between the owner of the company, the franchisor, and the individual, the franchisee. What tends to happen is the franchisee is licensed in some way or by some contract mechanism to use the franchisor's trade names, operating systems, and resources. And those resources include things like support, premises, vehicles, whatever is needed to get the franchise off the ground for the franchisee. In exchange for the rights to use the franchisor's business model, or i.e. sell the product service and be provided with all of those resources, the franchisee obviously pays a franchise fee, sometimes known as a royalty, to the franchisor, and the franchisee must enter into a contract, franchise agreement as they're normally known, agreeing to operate in accordance with the terms specified in the contract. However, that contract is also about what the franchisor is going to supply to the franchisee. And what we sometimes see is a very one-sided franchise contract, what the franchisee is expected to do to remain within the franchise. But actually, the more enlightened and successful franchisors will be thinking about, what do you as a franchisor offer and promise to keep supplying to the franchisee, because that's what keeps them motivated in the game and helping both of you in this dynamic earn money and grow the business sustainably. That contract thing is really important as well, because one of the biggest areas that we see ADIs come a cropper when they enter the industry is entering into franchise contracts, because of that fear of the unknown and going independent from the start, going to franchise and getting into contracts that don't necessarily work for them ultimately, or they haven't read through thoroughly as a contract. So as a franchisor, you need to be aware of that behavior and act in a fair manner around setting up things like the franchise contract and the proposition as well. Next slide, please, Tom. In the wider world, not just in our sector, there's two primary franchise business models that exist today. The product distribution franchise, i.e. the franchisor manufactures the products themselves and the franchisee simply sells them. And the relationship is similar to a supplier-dealer relationships. The major difference in that is a franchise relationship. The franchisee may distribute the products on an exclusive or semi-exclusive basis, whereas a supplier-dealer relationship traditionally will supply lots of different brands with lots of different modes of supply at once. As an example, in our world of what product distribution franchises are, it's things like Coca-Cola, John Deere, and Ford Motor Company. They make the goods, they franchise the goods to be supplied by the franchisees. The business format franchise, which is more typical for the driving instruction industry, is the most common franchise model of all, in fact. And in this model, the franchise is allowed to use the brand and trade name of the franchisor, like in the product distribution model, but essentially the franchisee is supplying the product. You're supplying the training. Now, the franchisor arguably is supplying product to the franchisee, as in the support, the branding, the training, all of those kind of things, and often the product, which is the pupil acquisition. But you're actually supplying the product to the marketplace, which is your training itself. And McDonald's is actually a typical business format franchise example. So you'll be aware that most franchises, in fact, all in the UK, are franchises. Okay, next slide, please. So the franchisor is, and this is if you're thinking of doing this, being clear on what your role is, you are allowing the replication of your goods and services under a license or some form of agreement. There will be charges to the franchisee to replicate that franchise model, but also, you may have other charges in the contract as well, that for other services above and beyond the use of the product and the services and the brand. You have a duty really, and it's in your interest and in the interest of franchisees to ensure that the replication, consistency and standard of the product delivered by the franchisee is the same. You don't want to put your brand out there to somebody else and let them use it and then destroy it through poor delivery of your product and your brand. And we'll talk about that in the risks of franchising in a moment. You must supply the training, the branding, systems and processes that you want them to use as part of that license fee. You've got to think of it as you supplying a product to the franchisee as much as to the end user of the product as well. You're not just doing people a favor letting them use your brand. They're paying you a fee, ergo they are also a customer. They will expect things from you as well. And it's an agent responsible for the advertising the product to help supply business to franchisees. It's typical. Sorry, go on.
Can I add to this as well, please, Carly? Because this bit about an agent is really important. When we mention agents, because the franchisor normally doesn't just give the product, but the means of come to sale is done by the franchisor's phone number. That's normally the phone number that might be associated with the brand on the top of all the cars on the roof box. Now, the person who is the franchisor, their phone number, when the phone rings, they are responsible to ensure that the franchisees get work, but one phone call will only go to one place. It can't be spread between 8 or 9 different people you've got working for you. The thing we've got with the agent is that your phone number is, it has a connotation that if you have a problem between a customer and a franchisee, because they've come to your driving school with your phone number, you act as an agent for the person who has made the phone call. You've delegated that person to the trainer. So you are the agent for the client. And this means that you have got a duty of care to ensure that where you send that client to is going to be looked after by the person that's doing the training in a safe environment, in a professional working environment, and that person will be maintaining all of the standards that you have set in training, in professionalism, lesson prices, etc. So when you get the phone ring and you've got somebody in your office who's a secretary and says, yes, we can give you to so-and-so in your area, you act as an agent for that customer right the way through all the time they are training with that franchisee.
Yeah, and don't forget that actually you also have a duty of care to the franchisee. They are paying you for the product that is the pupil. And so the pupil needs to also be somebody, as in the product, needs to also be something that the franchisee can use. So if there is a problem with the pupil, the franchisee arguably has recompense with you to resolve that situation because you supplied that product as part of the contract in the first place. There is an attitude for some of the more nefarious operators of franchises. The ADI, the franchisees are fodder as much as the pupils, and it's just a numbers game. No, it's not. These are customers. Without customers, your business doesn't exist. With unhappy customers, take away business. So it's keeping both these dynamics happy and ensuring they've both got something that's fit for purpose, and they are fit for purpose for each other, that ensures a happy and successful outcome in terms of the business as well. It's self-defeating not to carry it out that way, because you won't make money and thrive in an environment where you're not ensuring the product and the service is right for both those customers in the dynamic. So next slide, please. So let's have a look at some of the benefits. People have ideas about setting up new businesses and expanding businesses, but going back to what I said to the beginning, it's really when you're serious about taking that step, almost taking a step back again and considering whether you're in the right space to do this and whether you fully appreciated the advantages, disadvantages, risks, all those things of doing it. Because you're about to invest in something, so you need to have done that risk analysis and benefit and opportunity cost benefit analysis, all of those things to make sure it's worth taking that step. So the benefits of franchising, start on a positive here, is it's a great way of growing your business at a much lower cost than other business growth models. So it can be cost effective in terms of not having to cover the cost yourself or gain funding, which again has a cost to it, to grow the business in terms of new premises, new staff, new manufacturing equipment if you were making more product, all of those kind of things. So, and it also cuts your risk in terms of investing in those things. That quick route to more sales can help you build your business quicker at a lower cost. So that's why the franchise model continues to be a really attractive business model to a lot of people. And also, a franchise in itself can build into a more saleable and profitable asset as a business and standalone business than a driving school on its own, doing just driver training with sole providers. So think about it like that. If that is a big advantage, that you're scaling the business up to something that is more investable or saleable in the future on a bigger scale. It's the cost control is, again, a really important benefit. So it can't be reiterated too much time. Each franchisee finances their own franchise outlet. They are paying you to be part of your model and to help you deliver growth to yourself and to them. And whilst the franchisee meets all of the costs of entering the franchise and collects some of the income, you'll be gaining income from their franchise fees and royalties, or a markup on the products, i.e. you might take a percentage of the lesson fee before the franchisee even sees that lesson fee as well. And that will all have to be bottomed out in any agreement and has to be clear, fair and non-misleading about what are the relationships going to be in terms of the income generated by you and the fees paid to the actual franchisee. In some respects, franchisees can be easier to manage. The franchisees are running their businesses and running them like a business, therefore reducing the management demands placed on you. However, it is not some Elysium where you have nothing to do, sit back and somebody else comes and does all the work for you. You are still providing a product and running a business to all of these customers in the dynamic. So you still have a job to do to deliver that. And one of the disadvantages we might discuss in the moment is, as that business and that franchise model grows, does it start to take you away from what you love, being a trainer, and more into a management and business manager role? And is that something that you want to do? You may say yes, you may say no, want to combine the two, and it's going to be about how you balance those two things. So the best franchisees also will highly motivated and have local expertise, making your life and your build of your business much easier. But you obviously have to invest a lot of time and effort into motivating them, training them, ensuring the consistency of the product, making sure they're happy with what they're getting out of the deal as well. It's also a really quick way, having a franchise and building a franchise, to expand the brand. If there are more people out there delivering your product and acting as an ambassador for your product, your brand gets places quicker than they would maybe if you were trying to do all of this on your own. It allows you also to meet demand more quickly than you would have done if you tried to just slowly deal with that demand on your own, customer by customer. And obviously at the moment where we're in a big demand, we're at this height of a demand cycle in the drive instruction market, it could be a good time for people to consider that. What you have to consider, though, is this demand we're experiencing at the moment sustainable, and measure that against how many franchises you're going to have, where you want the business to grow. Are we going to see this level of demand continue at this rate, or is it going to bump down a bit, and where's it going to level off, and what does that mean in terms of how you're going to expand the franchise? All of that has to be considered in the mix. Next slide, please, Tom.
You're talking about motivated franchises now, Carly.
Oh, sorry, I've gone to, I didn't know this was
Yeah,
still.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. To motivate. So again, just going back to that point there, it's not just a case of sitting back and taking in the money. There's going to have to be a lot of motivating of franchisees. In essence, there's going to be some activity that makes you wear even more hats than you already wear as a sole trader running a small business. You become a sales manager, you're a HR manager. Okay, you're not directly employing people, but you are responsible for those people. So training, development, motivating, sales plans so they can help you with the sales effort. Now, you might be doing the marketing and the people acquisition, but you want everybody who is operating under your brand in any way to be an ambassador and help pump up sales. So you need to train those people and equip them with the wherewithal to sell at every opportunity your franchise and bring more customers in as well. If you can get those people to do that job as an ambassador, you're winning. You've got a sales force as well as a training force on the road, spreading the word, doing good things with your brand, bringing you more customers. As you grow your business, another advantage is obviously purchasing power. So the things that you buy now on a single basis for a sole trader type business actually get cheaper when you're, grandma suck egg situation, things get cheaper when you buy in volume as a business. So a larger business is able to buy at a greater rate and able to secure things like funding more easily. That's another reason to expand than you would as a small sole trader business as well. The other thing to think about in an extremely isolated profession sometimes, where you don't necessarily have teammates to bounce ideas off, is you are having within your franchisee network suddenly a team of colleagues, a team of team players who should be, with your motivational skills and your ambition driving them, working together with you to pull that business forward. So there's a group of people that you can then bounce ideas off, feel like you're working with a team, and also you're offering that advantage to them. And I actually think that should be something franchisors promote a lot more than they do. It's very much at the moment promoted as a great way to earn income. We'll look after this for you, we'll take away the pain of that. Promoting the fact that the ADI coming into the franchise as a franchisee will get the opportunity to work as a team and with other colleagues and not feel quite so isolated is a great thing to promote to them. But it's also a great thing for you to grow a team that you can work with as well. And again, going back to the fact that it's a team, it's not just about generating new ideas and having people to help take those forward that you didn't have in a smaller business model. It also means you've got support, so you don't feel like you're quite alone with growing this business as well. So I'd say it's a symbiotic relationship. It's not just a top-down relationship. It's a relationship that goes both ways. You get support from your franchisees. If you put support in from them, you can both kind of come up with ideas about how to grow the business, and that will make for the most successful franchise model. Next slide, please, Tom. Slightly more negative, but we have to look at the risks of and disadvantages of doing it before we take that step. Some people will franchise, and I've seen this in other sectors, as a fix for a failing business. They have tried to grow the business by attracting funding and investment. So they've gone off to investors already to try and get funding. Investors have looked at it and said, nope, won't touch it. It doesn't look like a successful business. It's not grown. They've tried to grow it through organic means, which is actually growing the amount of income they've got coming in, growing the customer base. That hasn't worked. Franchising sometimes in some kind of international franchise models that are very eager for new franchisees to come in and will sell them an Elysium that doesn't actually result in a real business, can often kind of blind people to the fact that their core business isn't very good and they're franchising to get income in quick without having to do very much themselves. So whether you're a franchisee or a franchisor, you need to seriously investigate the foundations of the business you're going to put in place. The franchisee needs to be very clear before they sign a contract. This is a business they should be investing any of their money in. And you need to be clear that your business, as it stands at the moment, is investable. You are asking people to invest in your business when you start selling franchises. So is your business successful? Will it be sustainable? Will it grow? And can you keep providing what you're setting out to provide by setting out this franchise in the first place? Although we said that franchising was a lower cost model of expanding and growing a business, there are still costs involved. So again, you need to make the investment case to yourself before you go further down this road, because it will involve significant financial investment in terms of setting up the model, setting up the contracting, getting legal advice on those, working out how you're going to expand the branding, how are you going to supply the product, whether that's a training car, all of those kind of things, pupil acquisition, admin. How are you going to put all that structure in place? Do you need premises now you're going to grow the business? Do you need more support in terms of staff? You're not employing the franchisees, but to run a successful franchise, i.e. a larger company that's technically not employing people, but is in some way contracting people, do you need more admin staff? Do you need more staff on the ground who you will have to employ unless you go down another contracting route, like fixed term contracting or whatever, but you might have to take on more headcount to actually deliver this franchise model. So it's not a headache, finance-free way of doing things by any measure. Next slide, please, Tom. It will take a lot of time. Money is an incredibly valuable resource, but our time is an extremely valuable resource as well. And we've got to factor that in. And small businesses can often be poor at valuing time as much as things like income or outgoing fixed costs that they can see as a tangible thing, like a car or insurance. We have to measure time with a financial value as well. So it's going to take you a lot of time to set it up. you're going to have to take the time to recruit the right franchisees to make sure your model works. And when you're running the franchise, it's going to take you away from training if you still want to do that. And you're going to have to juggle your time between those two roles, or you're going to have to make a decision at some point that you're managing the business and not training anymore. You'll have to develop and deliver a suite of training. If the product of driver education is what you sell, it has to be that top quality, up-to-date product. And that means lots of CPD and training for the providers of the product. That's the product development. That's the product quality. So it kind of sometimes makes me laugh where we get trainers who say, I haven't got time to do CPD. I don't want to do CPD. I got my ADI license 20 years ago. Why should I do anything else? Because you sell education for a living, and that educational product should be up to date in terms of your skills and knowledge in terms of providing it. And that has to follow through to any franchisees, because they are part of your product supply. So they have to be at the most up-to-date quality level of what they can do. It's not just also the training about how you would like people to deliver your mode of driver training. For example, you might have a specific approach to learner driving. You might actually supply a lot more than just in-car practical training. You might do group theory sessions or whatever that the franchisee is also going to be expected to provide. And you might, as part of your licensing, license those kind of courses to them and they run them. So you're going to have to maybe train them in all the aspects of the product that you supply, not just, being, the average ADI going out in the car doing the Safer Driving for Life curriculum. You might have systems and processes that you want them to follow. So they may need training in those systems and processes. Otherwise, it's going to create a lot of more time and mistakes, which are costly in your systems and processes if people haven't been trained effectively. So that's a consideration as well. As I said earlier on, you have to decide whether in your ambition to grow a bigger franchise, is it going to take you further and further away from being a driver trainer and more of a business owner stroke manager and all the hats that implies? And are you happy to do that? Do you want to give up the training side eventually and just manage the business and a group of franchisees, work on the pupil acquisition, the marketing, refining the franchise product, all of those kind of things? Because it may very well take you away from training altogether. Next slide, please. And so some of the considerations that I would recommend if I was sitting there right now thinking of expanding my business via the method of franchising is this the right time? I mentioned briefly that it looks like the right time at the moment because we're seeing in the industry peak demand caused by the post-lockdown environment, shortage of tests, short timeline to tests. Pupils are in a panic. You've got the backlog of pupils who are already booked in to have a test that you have to refresh before they go for tests. Plus you've got that backlog of people behind them who want to start to drive for the first time. That demand level will not sustain. It will fall at some point. Some of the pupils waiting to start for the first time will give up waiting and decide not to learn to drive at this time. We're already in a recessionary environment. Once furlough ends, we'll actually see more businesses fail. Yes, we've got high employability, surprisingly, because of the furlough measures and business support measures at the moment. But when that funding and support gets switched off, we will see some businesses fail without that funding and support, and we will see employment figures dip a little bit. That in turn will affect, especially twinned with the recessionary environment, the availability of pupils and income for driving school as well. So that's why make hay whilst the sun shines now, but our learnings from COVID are we need to put some money in the bank to allow for those dips in demand as well. It won't be obviously as serious as lockdown, but we can't sit here and imagine demand for driving lessons will just continue on this very high curve. So whilst it looks like a great time to expand now, just bear all of those things in mind and try and predict, because each area of the UK might have different demand cycles, but overall as well, is this the right time? And how big are you going to go with this franchise? Don't necessarily base it on the demand we've got now. Base it on what is realistic demand and what the market's going to look like over a 5 to 10 year period. Because obviously you don't just want to dip in and dip out of creating a franchise. It's something you're going to put a lot of time and investment in. So you need to have what we call an investment time horizon, when, from when you go in to when you want to exit from it, or how long you can sustain this business as well. What I said to you before is there's going to be cost considerations and time considerations, and to help you with the time and to deliver the most efficient model, you might need more people. And that's got to be factored into costing out setting up a franchise, or eventual costs that you might need to legislate for in your forward planning for the business plan. So you really should have a business plan being put together before you even think about setting up a franchise. Have you fully evaluated all the risks of having a franchise model, the risks of the franchisees to you? What if they don't do something right with the customer? What if they do something really inappropriate for a customer? One ADI doing something really bad to one pupil under your brand can absolutely wipe out the reputation of your entire brand overnight. So how are you going to mitigate and manage those risks? How are you going to mitigate the risk of franchisees not paying and refusing to pay? We're in a market at the moment where there's lots of demand around and people are running around servicing that demand, but there's also a huge amount of disputes going on between franchisees and franchisors, and franchisees saying they're not paying franchise fees, franchisors threatening to take people to court. There's all of these things that are a big distraction when people really want to get back to making genuine income as well. So think about all of those risks. And again, are you ready to take on that managerial, that business manager role and business owner role in a bigger way and be responsible for all of those risks and all those resources multiplied across other people? Are you ready to step up and be responsible for providing a product to more people, a different product, pupil acquisition, training, all of those kind of things? They're paying you a franchise fee. They're going to expect that you're going to supply those things and continue to supply those things as well. And as that business grows and you think it can grow and it's sustainable, when you take on more people or when you take on more franchises, how are you going to scale up? And can you do that? And what's the plan to scale up? What's it going to cost you at each stage? Where's the risks in scaling up? Or can you scale it down easily if we do go into a constricted demand market where you see that demand drop off a cliff, for example? So those are some of the considerations that you need to make and help you in deciding whether this is a step for you before you even take the step of starting to construct the franchise. Next slide, please, Tom. Once you've gone through that process, you then need to write a business plan. It's not a simple case of, yes, I'm going to do it, and let's just get into the nitty gritty of contracts and how am I going to expand, what's the licensing arrangement for my brand, and what's the training going to be. It's actually going to be about writing the business plan to make sure that you test that you can do all of these things and it will work. But in the nitty gritty, just to show you the amount of work in there, there's putting together things like contracts. And I would suggest, yes, you could use standard templates that are already in existence in the driving industry. However, I would always have a lawyer look at any of my contracts. We have a free half an hour service for all members where they can consult with a legal provider and then have a reduced rate for advice after that. Don't just use a template off a website without having it checked, because your business is your business. It might have some unique attributes. And there's a lot of risk, obviously, in these contracts for both sides. Deciding whether you're going to run a model which is purely AGIs, what we call oven-ready trainers, experienced, already have the qualification in place, or are you going to get involved in generating your own oven-ready AGIs by training PDIs as well? So a lot of franchises are doing that. They are growing their own rather than just taking on oven-ready ADIs. And again, that's a resourcing requirement. That's time, that's money and investment as well. It can generate you money, obviously. You've got to go through the process to become an audit trainer, preferably. You've got to have the training materials in place with PDIs, but they will pay you an income. But you've got to supply the goods to them and manage those PDIs as well, alongside all your other pupils. Training facilities and equipment, what are you going to do there around those? What do people need? What do you need? Do you need premises now other than your own premises at home? What are the monitoring and evaluation facilities you're going to have? I mean, talking about facilities, it's really about systems and processes. How are you going to evaluate these people, monitor them, make sure they're doing the job to the required standard out in the field? And also, how do you monitor yourself that you're doing the right job for them as franchisees? Service contracts for covering all the services that you provide, not just I'm going to give you this, this, and this, and you're going to give me money. It's what are they getting for you in detail, and what are they not getting from you is just as important. So it's clear what you will and won't do for the franchisee and what they should and shouldn't do under your license. You have to have things like contingencies in there, contingency resources. So have you got enough supply of bodies on the ground to service pupils that you have acquired, even if they've been allocated to somebody, if that somebody goes off sick? So do you have enough available supply of trainers? Do you have enough available supply of vehicles? So if you're expected to be able to supply this contingency to both the pupil who's paid for the lesson and wants a trainer, doesn't really care if they're sick that day or that week or on long-term sick, you've got to supply a trainer to them, they've paid for it. Or is it a vehicle because the trainer is off the road for some reason and you're actually part of the vehicle supply to the trainer as well, rather than them using their own? There needs to be centralized and accessible business administration tools. So, you really, for control purposes, efficiency and consistency purposes, you want everybody to be using the same business admin tools like a CRM, the customer relationship management databases, like accountancy packages. So you're able to monitor things better and getting everybody inputting into one system. So it's no point having a few pieces of paper in a concertina file system. We need to have a proper business management tool. And there's lots of off-the-shelf open source versions available now, but supplying that is part of a quality supply of a franchise now and helps you run the business more efficiently. Plus, it gives you eyes on everything that's happening in your system. You need to obviously supply marketing and branding materials. So at the moment, you're branding and doing your own marketing on those micro cost bases for your business. That needs to be ramped up, and you need to be able to supply all that marketing and branding to third parties as well for their websites, their cars, all of those kind of things. You need to decide, are you going to get them to pay for that as part of the franchise agreement? What are you providing? If they want extra stuff, what is the charging for all of that? How do you get those resources to people and keep them up to date? What are the guidelines for that usage to make sure they consistently give the best representation of your brand? And then you need to look at, how are you going to acquire pupils and market to pupils on a much larger scale than you're doing at the moment for your business? So where are you going to get the pupils? How are you going to manage the pupils? How are you going to allocate the pupils? How are you going to manage the pupils? And do you need more robust systems and procedures in place, given that you're giving those pupils effectively to third parties that you need to assure are doing their job, and the pupils are fit for purpose for those trainers as well, because they're the customer too. And there needs to be that financial management and oversight. You're going to be generating income for yourself and paying yourself as you do now, and paying out all your costs for your business as it stands. But now you're moving into a model that you have to start paying them as well, and paying costs out to suppliers of goods you're passing on to the franchisor as well. So you're managing a lot more income and outgoings than you would have done as a smaller business. Okay, next slide, please. So we've really covered quite a lot about what a franchisee in broad principles should expect from the franchisee. But when a franchisee really wants to take on the franchise opportunity, you need to have something like a franchise disclosure document, normally known as FDD, a heads of terms, or an example contract that they can look at that sets out the fees, the franchisee's obligations, your obligations to them, the terms and conditions, and also may want to include, and some franchisees may increasingly interrogate you on this, company trading history, where you're at as a business. Are you a sustainable business? Because they are seeing it as an investment. They're paying you money, and they want to know that you're not going to go bust tomorrow once they've paid their business. So you need to lay out what you're providing to them, why they should buy it, invest in it from you, what protection you offer them, what services you're offering them, and then what you expect from them as well. It's that two-way relationship. And again, I would suggest that somebody with a legal eye looks over those kind of documents for both parties' safety as well. Sometimes as well, franchisees also offer financing programs. So again, different models. You may choose to have a franchising model where the trainer will use their own car. You have to have agreements and assurances obviously in place for that, because you are, taking it on trust that they're going to have a roadworthy vehicle. You can't take it on trust. You have to have something written down about the requirements and what the franchisee has to supply. Or you might want to mitigate the risk of them using a vehicle that you have not personally assured and provided by helping them get a vehicle, either by providing the vehicle, i.e. you lease it and lease it on as part of the agreement to the franchisee, or you offer them finance to go and get that vehicle from an approved supplier that you're happy with, and we'll do all the branding and everything as well. Once you get into this, and generally, in any kind of contract, it's good to take the line that you would if you were selling financial services, because obviously financial services and their sale are much more heavily regulated than other products, other than perhaps pharmaceuticals. But what the principles are in selling financial services is that everything needs to be clear, non-misleading and transparent to avoid what we call mis-selling. So if you're going to start supplying things that are financial options or financing options, it's best possibly to do that with a finance partner, or to make sure that you're working with somebody who's knowledgeable about the sale of finance packages and what you're obligated to do as part of that. DIA is FCA Financial Conduct Authority approved to sell financial services. We don't sell them necessarily, but because we offer an insurance product, even by third party, we see it as sensible to be FCA regulated directly. No other association in our space does that, and no other association has financially experienced financial service people at the top of the organization who know how to keep within the lines of what is clear, transparent, non-misleading, has a process for dealing with issues of that nature. You are entering into this field yourselves when you start offering financing options. And some of the disputes that we see in the franchise world between franchisees and franchisors are around this financing option or the leasing option, or these kind of credit and loan issues around the vehicle itself. So you've got to make sure you're on the side of right and you have clear contracts and everybody's clear about what they're getting into, and that you're operating that in a professional and transparent manner and in compliance with regulation as well before you get into doing that kind of thing. And then where you have to look at the franchisee expecting from you the support in terms of any equipment, any resources. If you're doing training, will you need to provide premises for that training? All of those kind of things. What is it that you would expect as a franchisee and you see other franchises offering, and how are you going to offer that, and how are you going to assure its continued supply and the quality of that supply as well? Because that's what they'll expect from you for their fee. Next slide, please. As we said before, they're going to expect training and operational guidance. So not just training in how you would expect them to deliver the driver training product under your brand, but also anything to do with your processes and procedures for customer management, customer service, safeguarding, all of those kind of things as well. So what is the baseline training that you would expect to put in with a new franchisee and they should expect from you? But also as an added benefit, and also to protect your product and make sure it's the best quality, what ongoing training are you going to offer? Is there going to be a CPD program for all the franchisees to make sure they're at the top of their game, their knowledge is where it should be, and they're the best reflection of your brand, delivering the best product at all times? Plus, a lot of the biggest whinge, and you'll back me up on this, Howard, is that the national franchises, not naming names here, sell the dream of the CPD support and training the franchisee will get when they sign on the dotted line. But often on the ground, we get complaints from franchisees that they've never received that training and support, and they feel they were just left out to dry by the franchisor.
If I can just add something here, Carl, if I may, there was a test case with a company in Brighton who were a franchise company, and it was a driving school company as well. And what they had is they were all over Sussex and part of Hampshire and a little bit of Kent. And it got so big that the guy that owned it set up area managers. And he made it very clear to all of the franchisees that their franchise payment included training. And the area managers were demanding payment from the franchisees as well. So they were paying twice for it. And the company was taken to court over it and became a test case. If you pay franchise fees to a franchisor, the franchisor has to supply training as part of that royalty payment. So don't be expecting, you being a franchisor, the training has to be included in the franchise agreement, and the payment that you charge has got to include your time for doing the training, and all the necessary resources, manuals, etc. is required for that training has to be sourced from that money. You cannot charge extra for training. It's got to be in the agreement.
Yeah, and if it's in the agreement, and anything that's in the agreement that you've agreed to supply, so pupil acquisition, so can you give it, and you've got to continue supplying it unless you have a reasonable reason not to. Otherwise, the goods are deemed not fit for purpose, and the franchisee could conceivably be entitled not to pay the fee or asked to exit the contract and have a refund of their fee as well. Now, acts of God, pandemics, all of those kind of things have meant that many franchisees cannot supply pupils at the moment. But some franchise agreements would actually give the franchisee favor that it's not their fault they can't receive it, and they should at least have a part of their fee reduced for that period because they haven't had the goods for which they were contracted to pay for from the supplier. So you have to think about, the sustainable supply of all the things that you set out in the agreement. As the example Howard's made there, the owner hadn't thought about the growth in terms of the training and got to a point where he built to a certain scale and had to put in extra resources at extra costs to help manage the franchisees on the ground and deliver that training. So all that has to be specced into your business plan and your forecasting of costs, time, all those kind of things as well. We've spoken about before marketing and advertising. Franchisees are going to expect part of the thing they're paying for is your brand, and they will be helping you expect that brand. So what is the support that you're going to offer? What are the materials and how are you going to get them to use them around marketing and branding as well? Some franchises include all of that in the base franchise fee. Some charge an additional cost on top of that as well. Some franchisors also lend administrative services to franchisees. So actually, say a franchisee gets so big, you might be able to offer services to almost what is becoming the micro kind of franchise within your franchise. They've grown to such an extent that you can say, well, when you get to the point that even you need some services like a PA, we can supply that service to you, or we can supply other services to you as well. So it's thinking through, as you scale up, what's the opportunity to supply more stuff to your franchisees, but also what's going to be your responsibility to supply more things to these people because it's in the baseline contract for them as well. Next slide, please, Tom. And overall, it's support. Again, Howard, you would probably say, because you're on the help desk more than I am these days, one of the biggest feelings of being let down and sometimes defrauded is not too strong a word that an ADI may feel, is they were promised a lot of support. There was promised a team, and they were promised all of those things in the sales pitch to the franchise, and it just never manifested itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad taste in the mouth and a lot of breakups with franchises. And one thing the franchisor has to be careful of is the exit strategy that they allow the franchisee to have. Another test case took place in Wembley. A franchisor decided in the contract that they would not allow a franchisee, once they'd left the franchise, to work within 6 miles of the driving school. And the judge just laughed at it and said, what on earth are you on about? There's no way can you put any clause in a contract as an exit to someone who leaves your organization to say they cannot work wherever they want to. So you've got to be careful that you can't sort of try and have all your eggs in one basket. You've got to be allow these people to go. And bear in mind that we're talking about you being a franchisor and training people to do the job and copying your template. You've got to remember that some of these people will become your competitors later when they leave. Especially you train PDIs, they've come to you because you're local, you're convenient for them to do their training. They may not want to stay very long. They want to get their own businesses going because they want to spread their wings. They do that, but they can become your competitors. So you have to be, you do have to have something in your contract to say what property and intellectual rights they can take with them that belong to you, and what they can't take. What you cannot do is tell them where and they can and cannot work after leaving your contracts.
And then you need to put that to the test of what's reasonable, because do not delude yourselves. I'm sure the people on this call won't, but we do actually see contracts that appear that the author of the contract was deluding themselves. What is reasonable? Because in the case of the Wembley franchise, the judge decided it wasn't reasonable what was in that contract. So the contract will not be upheld in that case. So, the law is a test of what is reasonable. So have a think about what is reasonable for you to mitigate as a risk with a ADI going off themselves and taking all the pupils. Now, I know that some franchisors have agreements in place that say, we know which pupils we've allocated to you. You do not take those pupils when you leave. However, if you wish to buy those pupils off us when you leave, you can do so, but there will be a fee charged. And we've seen cases where people sign up to those agreements, they've gone off, and within 6 months they've taken those pupils because they think 6 months is a reasonable period, and the franchisor has tried to pursue them and invoice them for what they perceive to be those particular pupils at that agreed cost. But in some senses it's too late. Then the ADI has disappeared off into the ether, and you'll spend more money chasing that person for that money than you would in getting that money back. So again, that's a risk that needs to be considered. But support is really important. It's actually counterproductive not to give your franchisee support and treat them like dirt. Not saying anybody here would do that, but unfortunately we see those cases in the world of franchising where the ADI is treated like fodder, and that they're lucky to have this franchise agreement and with this franchise, and they become very disgruntled and they want to go and they exit, and they become sometimes a competitor or a real thorn in the side of the reputation of that franchise locally as well. So, support people, train them, motivate them, reward them, make sure they're getting the income and all the things that they were promised in the contract that is reasonable that they should earn from that, and you'll be able to grow your franchise successfully and sustainably. Next slide, please. Questions I think we're on to now. Is there anything that we haven't covered you want to explore in a bit more detail, challenge in any way, look at scenarios and cases that you might be looking at?
There's nothing in the question box at the moment.
No? You're a quiet bunch this morning. We've obviously stunned you into silence with all of that. I hope we have. Yeah, we're making notes. I hope we haven't put anybody off in terms of looking at the disadvantages and some of the pitfalls, and not just making, but we need to do that to help you make the most realistic appraisal of whether this is a step for you, and also to help you understand what the pitfalls are when you set it up to protect you and to protect your future franchisees as well. And I think personally, there is a good opportunity to set up a franchise in the business at the moment and do something different and improve on some of the franchise offerings that are out there. So one of the things I would recommend as you're evaluating your approach to setting one up, or even if it's an option for you, do that competitor analysis. Look at what everybody else is offering, the big guys, the small guys. What can you learn from them? What do they do? What's their interaction like with their franchisees and the pupils? What are the services they're offering? And then where's the gaps? What is it they're not doing? What can you improve it? Where can you create unique differentiation from the existing providers? And what lessons can you learn from the mistakes that they've made in the past as well? And that will really help you set up a sustainable franchise, and one that people are attracted to be part of as well. And that's, I think, all we've got on this at the moment, unless anybody's got any questions. Obviously, you can always email us if you've got any questions about anything in our webinar provision. Do you want to talk about what's coming up, Howard?
Tom normally does that for us, actually, because he's got his finger on the pulse. Yeah,
we'll let you do more than just move slides.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so we've got obviously you can go to the DI Academy where it's got all our courses on there, but we've got some new dates for our standards check virtual classrooms that we run. So we've got day and evening sessions in July that are available now. So have a look on the website for those. We've also got some more dates set for our Applied Coach Approach course, our Safeguarding course, and our new Mindfulness course that we're doing as well. So all the dates are on the Academy with all the information on there. And if you've got any questions about any of them, just get in contact with me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Great. And if anybody wants any individual one-on-one advice about developing their business plans in general for their business, looking at the business model and how they expand it, or even looking at things like exiting, exit strategies. People always look at starting a business, expanding a business, but actually exiting a business is an art in itself to get what you want out of it. And also starting a franchise. I'm always very happy to speak with people one-on-one, and also Karen is a qualified business coach within our business too. And our ADIs themselves who've had experience of running their businesses have got a lot of experience to bear. So don't hesitate to email support if you want to have a chat with us about your individual case. It's sometimes difficult in a group setting to ask questions that are personal to you and your business. We understand that. We're always happy to have a phone, an email, or a video call with you to talk about your individual needs.
If you do want to talk to the ADIs, then please email support@driving.org. And if you want to talk to membership, it is help@driving.org. If you use those two emails correctly, your questions, etc., will get to the right place a bit quicker Otherwise, it gets moved around a bit, and it's you can lose half a day to a day for an answer. So it's for the AGIs, it's support@driving.org for AGI matters, training, difficult pupils, etc. For anything to do with membership, breakdown, recovery, tax service, everything that sort of thing, PLPI, all that sort of thing is help@driving.org.
One last thing that I forgot to mention very, very quickly, it's something I can chat to people individually about, is if you are thinking about setting up a franchise, it is fundamentally setting up another business. So it may be that you could tap into some business startup or business support funding. This is not just COVID related funding, this is funding that has existed within lots of different enterprise areas within the UK for a long time. So it could be you're tapping into that, could help you finance some of those costs of expanding your business into a franchise. So it's always worth looking at those options too. And I'm again, because I've got a background in SME funding, I'm very happy to talk to people about those options as well. Okay, well, hopefully the weather will improve in your area soon. It stopped raining here for 5 seconds in Surrey. And I hope you're all still keeping safe and well and enjoying being back at work if you are back at work at the moment. And hopefully we'll catch up with you soon to discuss some more key topics in driver and rider training. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.